In one of our earlier bonus episodes released this week, we touched on the fact that maybe the Canadians should consider doing a full-scale rebuild. There's one issue with that. We don't even know if the general manager who would even be in charge of said rebuild will even be around to do it. As we all know, Marc Bergevin's contract status very much up in the air. Is it time for Montreal Canadiens owner Jeff Molson to address all of this and figure out where the team is going to head for next season?
I think Jeff Molson has had that conversation with Marc Bergevin over the course of the summer. Obviously, nothing new to report other than it's in Bergevin's hands. I think that I'm assuming that he got a contract offer, but he plays the game of I'm going to fulfill my obligation for this year. I'll look at what's happening or not happening at the end of the year, but I don't know whether Jeff can go any farther than what he's done right now. It's with Bergevin and what he wants to do, and ultimately, if Jeff Molson feels that it's going to come to an end after this year, there's probably some workings as we speak. Who's going to replace him, and it's going to be an interesting time. Within the next year to see what's going to happen with that upper management.
Yeah, I think it's past time. I think the issue that I have with the way that the Montreal Canadiens are putting everything like on Bergevin right now is that we're in year 9 now. We're talking about a GM who consistently said for most of his tenure that he was going to build through the draft. The Canadiens have the fewest drafted players on their roster right now of any team in the league that isn't an expansion team over the last couple of years. They have the same number as Vegas, and obviously more than Seattle because they have 0, because they've only done 1 draft. At a certain point, when you're always trading for players and always looking to sign players, it becomes extremely expensive and you get less wiggle room to do things, right? The development track record of this team is very poor. You look at the players who are on the roster right now. Carey Price obviously is not. So you've got Brendan Gallagher, Jake Evans, Cole Caulfield sent to the AHL, but we'll count him anyway. Arturi Lehkonen, Alex Romanov. Of those guys, Gallagher was from the Gainey Gauthier regime, which is the same scouts and head of scouting in Trevor Timmins, but they had a better hit rate on star players. There's not a single impact player that Marc Bergevin has drafted and developed that's on this Montreal Canadiens team. He's made some great trades. Don't get me wrong. Nick Suzuki, that's a Marc Bergevin move. Fantastic move. But at a certain point, you got to start making bank on those draft picks if you're ever going to be competitive. The Tampa Bay Lightning have 12 players on their roster who were drafted. If you're going to do a full-scale rebuild, you can't trust somebody whose development track record is this poor.
Excellent points, Andrew. You're right. And especially in a salary cap world and a flat salary cap world, those young guys coming up who aren't making a lot of money to help build your team. And you're right, with Bergevin, it's just been trying to patch holes here, patch holes there, patch holes there. The scouting record goes back to Trevor Timmins also. I mean, their scouting record is abysmal when you look at how few players that they've drafted who have come up and played for the team and had any kind of an impact on the team. So I think Jeff Molson, if the Canes are winning right now, everything was going well, the GM thing would be okay, well, they'll get to it. But they're not. Everything's falling apart. You're going to be coming up to a trade deadline. You're going to be moving forward. We don't know what's happening with Carey Price. Shea Weber's not coming back. Who is going to rebuild this? Jeff Molson doesn't have to rush to hire somebody right now because he's got time. This season is almost a throwaway season right now. But he's got to figure out how he's going to rebuild this and who is going to rebuild this. He needs a director of hockey operations and a GM. To me, Jeff Molson's not qualified to be a director of hockey operations. What qualifications does he have? He's never played in the NHL, scouted in the NHL, coached in the NHL. He's a businessman. Let him focus on the business and bring in hockey people to run the hockey. And he should be working on that right now. It seems more obvious as days go by that Marc Bergevin is not coming back. If he was coming back, he would have signed by now. That report, that he's the offer from LA, where there's smoke, there's fire. So he's probably looking where he's going to be next. So how much longer can Jeff Molson allow that to continue? I think he has to make a move before the trade deadline. He has to announce who his new GM is. If it's Marc Bergevin and it's money, then sign him. sign him. There's no salary cap on GMs. If he's your guy, sign him and explain why you think you should move forward with him. I don't think at this point they should, but if Jeff Molson believes that. But before the trade, you can't let Marc Bergevin go into this trade deadline with the team in the bad shape it is if he's not going to be here next year, and especially if his mind might already be in LA. Like, he might be thinking in the future what's good for the LA Kings more than what's good for the Montreal Canadiens. That's a really bad situation to be in.
Well, and it might not be a rush to, bring in the director of hockey operations or the GM at this specific moment and make that hire, but they better start the process, because the more time the new person has to evaluate what's going on with the team and where they need to go, the better, right? You don't want to hire somebody like right before the draft and have them flying blind, or right before free agency and have them feel like they need to sign somebody because, you got to get some competitiveness out of the last couple of years of Carey Price. You want them to see the whole picture for as long as possible. So I think this process is overdue, and they need to get on it, at least the hiring process, as fast as possible. Start interviewing candidates.
Just want to insert myself here real quickly before Stu finishes his point with regards to Marc Bergevin going to LA. The report suggests not to be surprised if there's any links. And as far as we know, unless there's information that you might have or anyone else might have, as far as we know, there's no actual offer between the Los Angeles Kings and Marc Bergevin. I just want to make that clear.
That would be tampering, and there's never tampering in the NHL, right? There's never
tampering. I've never heard of it.
Got a new contract for Jesperi Kotkaniemi sitting in the top drawer of Carolina GM's. The thing with Molson, I hope the only reason he's been silent about this is because he's working behind the scenes, talking with other teams to see if there's an employee that they have that he could have permission to speak to. So I hope the only reason for his silence is that he's working behind the scenes to figure out who the next GM and preferably the director of hockey operations will be moving forward.
We'll have to wait and see with what happens with the Marc Bergevin affair at this point. It's never a dull moment when it comes to the Montreal Canadiens. Let us know in the comments section about how you think this will all end up, whether or not this will end with Phil Deneau and Marc Bergevin reuniting in Los Angeles, or a new contract with the Montreal Canadiens for Marc Bergevin. Let us know in the comments section below. Subscribe to the YouTube page, subscribe to the Hockey Inside Out newsletter, and check out hockeyinsideout.com, because what else are you going to do? You don't have anything better to do.